Her name was Lisette Talate. She was born on Diego Garcia. She raised 3 children there. She buried her mother there. She left in 1972, not by choice. And she spent the next 40 years trying to go back. She died in 2012 in Mauritius. She never went home. In 1961, a U.S. Navy admiral flew over her island. He looked down, he saw a lagoon, a strategic position, a perfect military base. And he wrote a memo. 3 words, they must go. He was not talking about enemies. He was not talking about soldiers. He was talking about 2,000 people who had lived on that island for over 200 years. 6 years after that memo was written, their dogs were gassed. Their homes were bulldozed, their boats confiscated. And their island simply disappeared from the maps. This is not a conspiracy, the documents are declassified, the court rulings are public. The judgments exist. And in May 2025, 2 governments signed an agreement that officially closed this case. Except for the 2,000 families who still cannot go home. In the next 11 minutes, I am going to show you 3 things. First, how 2 democratic governments erased an entire people from a map and called it legal. Second, the single most shameless legal trick ever used by a colonial government. Documented in writing. And third, the deal signed in 2025 that the world called a victory, and what it actually means for the people it was supposed to save. There is a word in Chagossian Creole, Sagren. It means a sadness so deep, it makes you physically ill. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why that word exists. The paradise that was taken. Build what will be lost, then deliver the first reveal. Let the images breathe. The Chagos Archipelago. A remote chain of islands, in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Equidistant between Africa and Asia. The largest island, Diego Garcia, a thin strip of land, curved around a deep blue lagoon. For more than 2 centuries, a community had lived here, the Chagossians, descendants of enslaved Africans, brought to work the coconut plantations in the 18th century. By the 20th century, they were a people of their own language, their own culture, their own roots, buried in that island soil. They had a school, a church, a hospital, fishing boats, children growing up on coral beaches. Nothing remarkable, nothing strategic. Just a life, the moment everything changes. Then came 1961. A U.S. Navy admiral named Elmo Zumwalt flew over the archipelago. He saw the lagoon. He calculated the strategic position. He saw a perfect military base. What he did not see were the people. Or rather, he saw them. And decided they were a problem. The memo he wrote to Washington contained a phrase that would echo through classified documents for the next decade. The island should be swept and sanitized. Swept and sanitized. That is the official U.S. government language used to describe a community of 2,000 human beings. The erasure 3-step legal trick. The dogs. Sagren. The exile. Each revelation is a step deeper. In 1965, Britain quietly separated the Chagos Islands from Mauritius. No public vote. No announcement. The inhabitants were not informed. The islands were given a new name. The British Indian Ocean Territory. A name designed to sound administrative, neutral. Then came the legal problem. International law protects indigenous populations. You cannot forcibly remove them. So here is what the British government did. Each step needs to land. Step 1, they decided the Chagossians did not officially exist. In classified documents, they were reclassified. Not as permanent residents. Not as citizens. As temporary contract workers. People whose contracts could simply not be renewed. Step 2. A British official put it even more clearly in an internal memo. Declassified in 1997. He described the Chagossians as, quote, a few Tarzans and Men Fridays. That is the phrase a government official used, in an official document, to describe 2,000 British subjects. Step 3. They made those people leave. The deportations began in 1967. Slowly at first, Chagossians who left for medical treatment were simply told their return tickets would not be issued. Then the ships came. Those still on the islands were told to leave. Immediately. Permanently. And then came the dogs. To push out those who resisted, British and American officials ordered that the Chagossians' dogs be seized. The island had hundreds of dogs. They were locked in a sealed building and gassed using the exhaust fumes of American military vehicles. In front of their owners, the message was unmistakable. By 1973, Diego Garcia was empty. 2,000 people shipped to Mauritius and the Seychelles. With no money, no housing, no guarantee of anything, they settled in the slums of Port Louis. Their skills, fishing, coconut farming, island life, were useless in a city. Remember that word I gave you at the start? Sagren. A sadness so deep it makes you physically ill. Doctors started documenting cases. People were dying from grief. Not a metaphor. From grief. Lisette Talate, the woman from the beginning of this video, testified before a court in 1975. She said, I left behind my house, my furniture, my sewing machine, my chickens and my dogs. I was told it was temporary. I have been waiting for 50 years. 50 years. And the U.S. military base on Diego Garcia operated throughout Gulf War, Afghanistan, Iraq. Every U.S. military campaign since the 1980s ran through the island that Lisette Talate was born on. The Incomplete Justice, ICJ 2019. The deal. The missing chairs at the table. Firm, journalistic tone, state each fact like evidence. In 2019, the International Court of Justice, the highest legal body on the planet, issued its ruling. The decolonization of the Chagos Islands was declared incomplete. Britain's continued presence was declared illegal under international law. The UN General Assembly then voted. 116 countries voted for the return of the islands. 6 voted against. Let the number land. 6. Among those 6, the United States and the United Kingdom, the two governments whose decisions had created the problem in the first place. Britain called the ICJ ruling advisory, not legally binding. And nothing changed. Then came October 2024. A historic announcement. The United Kingdom agreed to transfer sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. The headlines were immediate. Victory for international law, a righting of historical wrongs. Historic deal. And then the UN human rights experts read the small print. Slow this final reveal right down. This is the gut punch. The deal included a 99-year lease. The United States would keep their military base on Diego Garcia for 99 more years. And the Chagossians were not at the negotiating table. Their right to return was not guaranteed in the agreement. Not to Diego Garcia, not to their specific islands, not in any enforceable way. In June 2025, UN human rights experts issued a statement. Their exact words, the deal fails to guarantee the right of Chagossians to return to Diego Garcia. In May 2025, the agreement was signed. Formally. Donald Trump called it a colossal act of stupidity. Not because the Chagossians deserved better. Because he didn't want anything complicating U.S. military access. 2 governments negotiated, 2 governments signed, 2 governments held press conferences. And the 2,000 families, whose dogs were gassed, whose homes were bulldozed, whose island was erased from maps, learned about the terms of the deal from the news. Like everyone else. In 1961, a memo said, they must go. In 2025, a signed agreement said, the matter is resolved. Lisette Talate was born on Diego Garcia. She raised her children there. She buried her mother there. She was deported in 1972. She spent 4 decades trying to go back. She died in 2012. In Mauritius. She never went home. Sagren. The sadness so deep it makes you physically ill. The grief of being separated from the land you come from. A grief with no cure. Because the land still exists. It is simply forbidden. Here is the question this story leaves you with. When an international court declares a crime, and the responsible governments say that ruling is advisory, when 116 countries vote for justice, and 6 say no, when 2 governments sign a treaty and call it resolution, but write it without the victims in the room, what is international law, actually? 4. And the question underneath that, the one that makes you uncomfortable. If a powerful country can erase 2,000 people from a map, for a military base, with no real consequences, what does that tell you about every other map you think you understand? The documents exist, the judgments are public, the families are still waiting. And Diego Garcia is still on no map you will ever be allowed to visit.